we've been talking about greatness, which is a big word. It's a huge word. Not a word that we are particularly fond of using to talk about ourselves. Maybe a little uncomfortable talking about ourselves. So one of the things that we're after is a story, is information from ourselves, in this case from you, about some moment, some time when you think you've achieved it, when you're able to say, on that night, on that day, at that moment, I achieved some measure of greatness. Could you find such a moment?
Yeah, I think so. I thought about that, and what I believe to be a moment of greatness for me, I was with a friend of mine in Gainesville. He and I had worked together in Tampa here, and he had asked me to come up to the University of Florida, to Shands Hospital, to take a look at a program that he had put together. And one of the things that they did is they created art projects for oncology pediatric patients, for children with cancer. And this first day, and he said, bring an instrument along, just come along, and bring an instrument. And so we went on this one particular ward, and on this particular ward, most of the children were waiting for bone marrow transplants. And so there was a certain feeling of heaviness as I went in, I didn't know exactly what to expect. And so we went through and I met the nurses, and he introduced me to a number of people, and we talked a little bit about the project. And then he said, well, would you sit down and maybe do some music for the children? And so 5 or 6 children came and sat down. And I'll never forget one young man in particular. His name was Anthony. And Anthony was the very next day about to go through his procedure. And he had on a mask. He had on a surgical mask, so I could only see his eyes. And it was a really powerful experience for me, because we kind of take eyes, nose, mouth for granted. But when you're sitting across from someone and all you see are their eyes, it was a really powerful thing for me. I said hello to everybody. And Anthony's mother brought him out and sat down next to me, and I kind of looked into his eyes, and his eyes were heavy, And so I said, okay, guys, and I created a song, and then I said, I tell you what, if you'll give me some words, and I'll take those words and I'll create a song. And so one little boy gave me like sky, and another song, a little boy gave me the ocean. And when we got to Anthony in a very soft and kind of quiet voice said, transplant. And so it struck me for a minute, and I thought, transplant. I said, does that mean to take something from one place and put it in another? And he kind of nodded his head. And so I began to create this song. And so I said, Anthony, come with me. And I don't remember all the words, but it was like I said, Anthony, come with me and let's take a journey together. Let's transplant ourselves from here where we're sitting now, and let's fly up to the sky. And let's fly with the birds, and then let's transplant ourselves into the sea. And I just kind of took him on this journey, and you could see his eyes begin to get brighter and lighter. And about halfway through the song, Anthony was rocking just a little bit. And when I finished singing the song, his eyes were bright and kind of glassy, and he just took his hand and just kind of put it on my knee. And I realized that in that moment, I had taken what otherwise was fear and a moment of real uncertainty, pain, and turned it into a creative experience, an experience that lightened Anthony's heart. Anthony had for a moment the opportunity to think of that word transplant in a positive way. Think of that whole concept and idea that this was like, I'm moving forward, moving from one place to the other. And I'll never forget that transformation in his eyes. And I think in that moment, I realized the power of words and the power of intention. Because I've done that many times beforehand with people. But in that moment, I realized how important it was for myself to be sort of a vehicle for someone to feel good in that moment, in that special moment, to take an idea, something that I could really feel, and turn it around. And so I have always kept that feeling in my heart. That was really kind of a transformational moment for me as well, because I realized the power of just simple intention and how it can really bring someone to a better place. And I had the good fortune of finding out weeks after that Anthony was doing really, really well, and that he loved his transplants.
That we're interested in asking these questions is what went into that. What were the qualities of that greatness, that great moment from you? We could see the effect that it had on Anthony. What came from you besides intention?
Love, an incredible amount of love. A commitment, because I was like, what can I do? So love and commitment, definitely, compassion. And I had to call upon the tools that I thought that I had. So, I kind of said, okay, in this moment here, I'm going to call on what I have to offer to really try to bring that to a place so that it really touches in the process. And that starts with allowing ourselves to recognize the fullness and the wholeness of who each one of us are.
But if I were using the word greatness right now, the way I think we react to it when we hear it, it's a synonym for vanity. And so the basketball player with the great gift of being able to slam dunk the ball or score 60 points in a game defines greatness as the 60th point, not in the eyes of the child who saw the last shot go in. So how do we change our view of even the word so that it sounds more like what you've described and less like what I've described?
By having these kinds of conversations. For me, the greatness in that moment is that slam dunk represented a tremendous amount of joy for a lot of people. And the greatness is in the fact that the stadium is full of people who come to appreciate the expertise or the ability, so that it's a reciprocal thing. So in other words, I think we have to have these kinds of conversations. There are lots of people walking around today who have a personal sense of smallness, many of us, because that's what we were told. Of course, many of us are small, but I mean, but we've been told that greatness represents, look at what he did, look at what she did. Now that's being great. So, we have to shift the paradigm to understand that we are all a part of this greater thing. And I think it really is all about having these kinds of conversations, helping to reinforce people to understand the fullness of their potential, and that greatness is in all of us, that each of us is a little chip of that greatness. And that there's a joy in participating in that, and that it's beyond us as an individual.